Well, good morning everyone from a rather moody but magnificent corner of the Scottish Highlands. John is outside, doing what he calls his morning patrol, which mostly involves staring intently at the van's tires as if he can diagnose their well-being through sheer force of will. I'm in here, nursing a warm mug and watching the mist perform its slow, silent dance across the surface of the loch. It's mornings like this that make you feel like you're the only person left in the world. It's funny, living in a space this small, you become intimately familiar with every single object you own. You have to. There's no spare room, no attic, no garage to hide the things you don't really need but can't bring yourself to part with. Everything in here has to earn its keep. It has to have a purpose, or multiple purposes, and it has to be worth the precious real estate it occupies. We got a lovely email the other day from a woman named Brenda, who's planning her own post-50 adventure. She asked a question that we get in various forms all the time: beyond the big stuff, the van itself, the solar panels, the heater, what are the smaller, essential pieces of gear that I truly couldn't live without? Not John's essentials, because that would be a very different video involving a specific type of zip tie and a wrench he has a frankly emotional attachment to. No, she asked about my must-haves. John just poked his head in, his cheeks rosy from the cold. Are you talking about my spanner set again? I am not, I said, smiling. I'm talking about my things. The things that make this house a home, even when it's parked by a random Scottish loch. Ah, the important stuff, he grinned. The things that stop you from throttling me when I can't find the map. He's not entirely wrong. So, I thought today, while the mist clears and John continues his patrol, I would take you through my top 5 essential, can't do without them pieces of gear. These aren't just things, they're extensions of our lifestyle. Each one is tied to a memory, a challenge overcome, or a moment of simple, profound joy. So grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's talk about the little things that make this big adventure possible. Alright, first on my list, and I'm starting with this one because it's in my hands right now, is my insulated, stainless steel French press. Now, you might be thinking, a coffee pot, Karen? Really? But you have to understand, this isn't just about caffeine. It's about ritual. It's about warmth. It's about starting the day, no matter where we are, with a small, civilized luxury that feels like home. I can see John nodding from the passenger seat where he's now settled. She's not kidding. I once suggested instant coffee. Once. The silence that followed that suggestion was, shall we say, profound. But the moment this French press truly earned its place in my Hall of Fame was about 2 years ago. We were in Norway, driving the Lofoten Islands, which, if you've never been, is like driving through a postcard that just keeps getting more beautiful. We'd found this incredible wild camping spot, tucked away in a tiny cove with a white sand beach and mountains that plunged straight into the turquoise sea. It was idyllic. The forecast had promised clear skies. The forecast, as it often does, was a liar. We woke up not to sunshine, but to the sound of wind howling like a pack of wolves and rain lashing against the van with a vengeance. It was the kind of horizontal rain that finds its way into everything. The temperature had plummeted overnight, and a damp, bone-aching chill had settled deep inside the van. Everything felt miserable. The windows were fogged over, obscuring our magnificent view. Our plan to hike up a nearby ridge was obviously a washout. We were just huddled under the duvet, listening to the storm, feeling our spirits sink with every gust of wind. It was one of those moments where the romance of van life feels very, very far away and the reality of being in a tin box in the middle of nowhere feels very, very close. Well, John had grumbled from his side of the bed. This is a bit grim. Just a bit, I'd agreed. My mind was already spiraling. We were stuck. The van was being rocked by the wind. It was cold. It was damp. What were we even doing here? Maybe we should have just bought a little cottage in the countryside and stayed put. Then, through the gloom, I had my aha moment. It wasn't a big, life-changing epiphany. It was much smaller, and much better. It was the thought of coffee. Not just any coffee. Hot, strong, properly made coffee. I wriggled out from under the duvet, my feet hitting the cold floor, and made my way to our little galley kitchen. I boiled the water on our little gas stove, the hiss of the flame a comforting sound against the roar of the wind. I spooned the dark, fragrant grounds into the French press, a rich, dark roast we'd picked up in a small Norwegian town. The whole process was a meditation. The pouring of the water, the 4-minute wait, the slow, satisfying plunge. As I poured the steaming coffee into our favorite insulated mugs, the rich aroma started to fill the small space. It was a scent that battled the damp and the gloom. It smelled of warmth, of comfort, of normalcy. I handed a mug to John. He wrapped his cold hands around it and took a sip. "Okay," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "I take it all back. This is not grim. This is cozy." And he was right. The simple act of making and drinking a proper cup of coffee completely transformed the moment. We sat there, propped up in bed, sipping our coffee and listening to the storm rage outside. But we weren't miserable anymore. We were warm. We were safe. We were together in our little metal cocoon, watching the weather do its worst, and we were perfectly content. We ended up spending the whole day in the van, reading books, talking, and just enjoying the enforced idleness. The storm became the backdrop to a perfect, cozy day, not the ruiner of our plans. So, you see, this French press isn't just a coffee maker. It's a mood changer. It's a morale booster. It's the tool that allows us to create a small pocket of comfort and civilization, even when a force 9 gale is trying to blow us into the Arctic Circle. It's the first thing I unpack in a new spot and the last thing I put away. It has earned its place, 100 times over. Okay, moving on to number 2. This one is less about comfort and more about pure, unadulterated practicality. I'm talking about my high-quality, merino wool base layers. A full set, long-sleeved top and leggings. John has his own set, and he'd probably list them too if he were making this list. They are, without a doubt, one of the most important pieces of clothing we own. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Wool. Isn't that itchy and bulky? The wool of our childhoods, maybe. But modern merino wool is a different beast altogether. It's soft, it's lightweight, it breathes, and most importantly for van life, it doesn't get smelly after one wear. Or 2. Or, let's be honest, 3. This is a crucial feature when you don't have a washing machine at your beck and call. The story for this one takes us to the mountains of Andalusia in southern Spain. We were there in late autumn, chasing the last of a European sun before winter set in. We'd spent a glorious week on the coast, all sunshine and seafood, and decided to head inland to explore the Pueblos Blancos, the famous white villages that cling to the mountainsides. The days were still beautifully warm, t-shirt weather, and the nights were cool but perfectly manageable. We found a spot to park for the night on a high plateau. The views were breathtaking. We could see for miles across rolling hills dotted with olive groves, the sky a vast, clear canvas of blue. We sat outside in our camp chairs, had a simple dinner of bread, cheese, and tomatoes, and watched the sun go down, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was perfect. We went to bed feeling smug and happy, wearing light pajamas, expecting another mild night. We were wrong. Horribly, terribly wrong. I woke up around 2 in the morning with a feeling I can only describe as icy dread. But it wasn't dread, it was just ice. I was cold in a way I hadn't been in years. A deep, penetrating cold that seemed to have seeped into my bones. The temperature inside the van had plummeted. I could see my breath in the faint moonlight filtering through the window. "John," I whispered, my teeth chattering. "Are you awake? I'm freezing." A muffled groan came from his side. "Me too." What happened? A quick check of the weather app on my phone told the story. An unseasonal, unexpected cold front had swept down from the Sierra Nevada mountains. The temperature outside was hovering just above freezing. At this altitude, with the clear skies, all the day's warmth had simply vanished into space. We had our diesel heater, of course, but we tried to use it sparingly, especially overnight, to conserve fuel and power. We hadn't thought we'd need it. We piled on every blanket we owned. We put on sweaters and socks. But we couldn't shake the chill. We were lying there, miserable and shivering, another potentially romantic night of van life turning into a test of endurance. Sleep was impossible. All we could think about was the cold. Then, the aha moment. It was John this time. He sat bolt upright. "The woolies," he exclaimed, his voice full of sudden hope. "Where did we pack the merino woolies?" It took a bit of fumbling in the dark, a clumsy, cold-fingered rummage through one of our overhead lockers, but we found them. We wriggled out of our inadequate pajamas and pulled on the merino base layers. The effect was almost instantaneous. It wasn't like putting on a thick, heavy sweater. It was a different kind of warmth. Within minutes, the fine wool fibers trapped our body heat, creating a perfect microclimate against our skin. The shivering stopped. The deep, internal chill started to recede. It was like magic. A thin, soft, lightweight layer of clothing was doing what 3 thick blankets couldn't. We snuggled back under the duvet, and the difference was night and day. We were no longer just surviving the cold, we were comfortable. We were warm. We were cozy. I fell asleep almost immediately and slept soundly until morning. When we woke up, the world outside was rimed with frost. It was stunningly beautiful, but undeniably cold. And there we were, perfectly toasty in our little van, all thanks to a simple set of woolen underwear. Since that night, they've become our secret weapon. We wear them as pajamas on cold nights, as a base layer for winter hikes, and even under our clothes on a chilly day of exploring a city. They pack down to almost nothing, they weigh next to nothing, and they can make the difference between a miserable, sleepless night and a cozy, restorative one. For that, they are absolutely essential. My third must-have is something small, but its value is immense. It's my headlamp. And not just any headlamp, but a good quality one with several brightness settings and, crucially, a red light function. John has one too, and we probably use them every single day. You might not think about it in a house, where you can just flip a switch and flood a room with light. But in a van, and especially when you're living in and around nature, your relationship with light changes. The sun goes down, and it gets properly, truly dark. A headlamp gives you your hands back. It allows you to cook, read, fix things, or walk to a campsite bathroom without juggling a torch. The red light function is the real game changer for living in a small space with another person. Red light doesn't ruin your night vision the way white light does. If John is already asleep and I want to read for a bit, I can switch on the red light and it doesn't disturb him. If I need to get up in the middle of the night, I'm not blasting the whole van with a searchlight. It's a small courtesy that makes a huge difference to domestic harmony. But the time my headlamp proved it was worth its weight in gold was a night of minor disaster in France. We were driving through the Dordogne region, a beautiful area full of castles and winding rivers. We'd been on the road all day and were looking for a place to pull over for the night. It was already getting dark, that deep, rural dark you only find far away from city lights. We were on a narrow country lane when suddenly there was a loud bang, followed by a horrible, rhythmic thumping sound. Flap 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 flap. Oh, that dreaded sound. A flat tire. John pulled over onto the grassy verge, what little verge there was, and killed the engine. We sat in silence for a moment, the thumping sound echoing in our ears. "Well," John said, in his classic tone of profound understatement. "That's a bit of a hiccup." A hiccup. We were on a dark, narrow lane, miles from the nearest town, with a completely flat tire. We had a spare, and we had the tools to change it, but the thought of doing it in the pitch black was daunting. The van's interior lights wouldn't reach. Holding a phone or a flashlight would make the job a two-person task, but an incredibly awkward one. This was the moment for the headlamps. We both strapped ours on. Suddenly, the scene was transformed. John had a bright, focused beam of white light exactly where he needed it, on the lug nuts, on the jack, under the chassis. I acted as lookout, my own headlamps scanning the dark road for the occasional car, my beam a clear warning signal. It was still a difficult job. The ground was uneven, the lug nuts were tight, and the spare was heavy. But it was possible. It was manageable. John could use both hands, he could see every detail, every greasy bolt and grimy thread. I could see him, I could see the road, I could see the tools he needed me to pass him. We became an efficient, light-wielding team. My aha moment came when I was searching in the grass for a lug nut that John had dropped. It had rolled away into the darkness. With a regular flashlight, I would have been sweeping a beam back and forth, hoping to catch a glint. But with the headlamp, my light was perfectly aligned with my vision. I just had to look, and the light was already there. I spotted it in seconds, nestled by a clump of weeds. It felt like a superpower. We got the spare tire on. We were dirty, we were tired, but we were safe and we were mobile again. As we packed the tools away, our twin beams of light dancing in the darkness, I felt a huge wave of relief and gratitude for this simple piece of gear. Without our headlamps, the experience would have been 10 times more stressful, 10 times more difficult, and potentially dangerous. That night, the headlamp wasn't just a convenience. It was a critical safety tool. It turned a potential crisis into a manageable problem. It gave us light, it gave us control, and it gave us the ability to solve our own problem on a dark road in the middle of nowhere. For that reason, I will never, ever travel without one. Alright, for my fourth item, we're moving into the realm of power and freedom. I'm talking about our portable solar-powered battery bank, or power station, as they're often called. It's essentially a big, clever battery in a box, about the size of a small cooler. We have solar panels on the roof that charge our main leisure batteries, but this portable unit is our ace in the hole. It gives us a level of self-sufficiency that is truly liberating. We can charge it from the sun with a separate, foldable solar panel, from the van's 12-volt socket while we're driving, or by plugging it into the mains when we're at a campsite. It means we can keep our laptops, cameras, phones, and other small devices charged up without ever having to worry about draining the van's main power supply, which we need for the fridge, lights, and water pump. The freedom this little box gives us is incredible. It means we aren't tethered to official campsites with electrical hookups. We can go off-grid, find those truly remote, beautiful spots, and stay there for days on end. It's the difference between visiting a wild place and truly living in it for a little while. The story that cemented this piece of gear as an absolute essential took place in Portugal. We were exploring the Alentejo region, a vast, sparsely populated area known for its cork forests, rolling plains, and incredible night skies. It's a part of Portugal that many tourists skip, and it felt like we had it all to ourselves. We had stumbled upon a huge reservoir, the Alquiva Dark Sky Reserve, one of the first of its kind in the world. The area is protected from light pollution, making it one of the best places in Europe for stargazing. We found a spot on a dusty track overlooking the vast, glassy expanse of water. There was no one else around. The silence was absolute. Our plan was to stay for one night. But as the sun set, the magic began. The sky didn't just get dark, it came alive. First Venus, then Jupiter, then thousands, then millions of stars, more than I'd ever seen. The Milky Way wasn't a faint smudge, it was a brilliant, shimmering river of light splashed across the entire sky. It was awe-inspiring, humbling, and utterly addictive. John, who is an avid amateur photographer, was in heaven. He set up his tripod and camera, ready to capture the spectacle. I was content to just lie back and stare, feeling utterly insignificant in the best possible way. One night wasn't enough. We knew it instantly. We had to stay. But staying meant using power. John's photography involved long exposures and a laptop for processing. I wanted to write, to journal, to capture the feeling of the place. We needed to charge our phones to stay in touch with family. In a normal off-grid situation, after a day or two, we'd start getting power anxiety, constantly checking the leisure battery levels, being frugal with lights. This is where our power station came into its own. The next morning, we set up its foldable solar panel in the bright Portuguese sun. While the panels on the roof topped up the van's main batteries, this separate system was busy filling our little power bank. All day, it just sat there, silently soaking up the sun. That night, and the next, and the night after that, we had all the power we needed. John could charge his camera batteries and run his laptop without a second thought. I could charge my tablet and phone. We could run a small fan to keep the air moving in the van. We weren't just rationing power, we were living comfortably. We ended up staying by that reservoir for 4 days. 4 days of glorious sunshine and 4 nights of unbelievable stars. We went swimming in the reservoir during the day and felt like we were the only people on Earth. At night, we sat in wonder, watching shooting stars streak across the glittering canvas above. It was one of the most peaceful and profound experiences of our entire journey. That experience would have been cut short without our portable power station. We might have managed a second night, but by the third, power anxiety would have set in, and we would have felt the pull of civilization, the need to find a campsite and plug in. Instead, we were truly free. We were untethered. The sun gave us the power to stay in a place that felt like a gift from the universe. That little box doesn't just provide electricity, it provides time. It provides the freedom to linger, to soak a place in, and to not have a beautiful experience cut short by a practical limitation. And that is priceless. Finally, my fifth and final essential item. This one is the least glamorous, but arguably the most important. It's our first aid kit. And I don't just mean a little plastic box with a few plasters and an antiseptic wipe. I mean a comprehensive, well-organized, and slightly customized kit that we know how to use. Living this life means you are often far from immediate help. You can't just pop down to the chemist if you get a nasty cut or a burn. A small problem can become a big problem very quickly if you're in a remote valley in the Alps or a deserted stretch of coastline in Greece. Having a good first aid kit is about more than just safety, it's about peace of mind. It's knowing that you have the resources to handle the small emergencies yourself. We've customized our kit over the years. Alongside the standard bandages, gauze, tapes, and antiseptics, we've added things we've found we need. Good quality tweezers for splinters, a serious burn gel, strong painkillers, antihistamines for surprise allergic reactions, and rehydration salts. We check it regularly, restocking anything we use and making sure nothing is out of date. The time this kit proved its absolute worth was on a hiking trail in Slovenia, in the Julian Alps. We were doing a beautiful, but quite strenuous, walk through the Triglav National Park. We'd been climbing for a couple of hours up a rocky path, surrounded by pine trees and the sound of distant cowbells. We were scrambling over a section of loose rock when my foot slipped. I put my hand out to break my fall, and my palm landed squarely on the sharp, broken edge of a rock. The pain was immediate and intense. When I pulled my hand back, there was a deep, ugly gash across the fleshy part of my palm. And it was bleeding. A lot. We were at least a 2-hour hike from the van, and a further drive from any town. Panic started to bubble up inside me. The sight of the blood, the throbbing pain, the knowledge of how isolated we were, it was a frightening combination. This is where John's calm nature and our preparedness kicked in. "Okay," he said, his voice steady and calm, which immediately calmed me. "Let's sit down. Let's have a look." He helped me to a flat rock and gently took my hand. While I applied pressure with my other hand, he unzipped his backpack and pulled out our first aid kit. This wasn't a moment for fumbling. He opened the compartmentalized bag, and everything was exactly where it should be. There was no panic, just a methodical process. First, the antiseptic wipes to clean around the wound. Then, the sterile saline solution to irrigate the cut itself, flushing out any dirt or grit. The bleeding was still heavy, so he took out a sterile gauze pad and had me apply firm, direct pressure. We sat like that for 10 minutes, me trying to breathe calmly, him talking to me quietly about the view, about what we'd have for dinner, about anything other than my bleeding hand. When the bleeding had slowed to a manageable ooze, he went to work again. He applied a strip of Steri-Strip, a type of adhesive skin closure, to pull the edges of the wound together. Then another sterile dressing, and finally, he wrapped the whole thing securely with a bandage, taping it firmly in place. The whole operation was neat, efficient, and professional. When he was done, my hand was securely wrapped, the pain was subsiding to a dull throb, and the panic was completely gone. The bleeding had stopped. The wound was clean and protected. We were able to slowly and carefully make our way back down the mountain to the van. We got it properly checked at a pharmacy in the next town a day later, and the woman there was incredibly impressed with John's handiwork. She said he'd done a perfect job and it would heal cleanly without needing stitches, which it did. That incident could have been so much worse. Without the right supplies, we would have struggled to stop the bleeding. The wound could have become infected. We would have had to make a panicked, rushed descent down the mountain, risking further injury. Instead, because we were prepared, we handled it. We took a moment that was scary and full of panic and turned it into a calm, controlled, and successful procedure. Our first aid kit wasn't just a box of supplies that day, it was a source of confidence and control. It allowed us to be our own first responders, and that feeling of self-reliance is at the very heart of what makes this lifestyle work. So there you have it. My top 5. A French press for comfort, wool base layers for warmth, a headlamp for convenience and safety, a power station for freedom, and a first aid kit for peace of mind. As I look back over the list, I realize there's a common thread. None of these are just things, they are enablers. They enable comfort, they enable exploration, they enable self-sufficiency, and they enable safety. It's easy to romanticize van life, and believe me, we do, almost every day. But the romance is built on a foundation of solid, practical reality. The freedom of the open road is only truly enjoyable when you feel safe, warm, and prepared. It's not about having a van stuffed to the gills with every gadget imaginable. It's about choosing your gear thoughtfully. It's about understanding the challenges you might face and equipping yourself to meet them. What we've learned, more than anything, is that the most essential gear isn't something you can buy. The most essential gear is a mindset. It's adaptability. It's the ability to look at a brewing storm not as a disaster, but as an excuse for a cozy day in the van. It's the patience to deal with a flat tire on a dark road. It's the resilience to handle a minor injury far from home. These items, my top 5, are just the tools that support that mindset. They help us to be more adaptable, more patient, and more resilient. Living this way has taught us so much about the difference between what you want and what you need. In our old life, our house was full of things we wanted but didn't need. Here, in this little home on wheels, everything is about need. But it's a joyful kind of need. We need the French press to bring us joy. We need the base layers to keep us safe and warm. We need the power station to give us the freedom to linger in beautiful places. The things we own serve our life, instead of us serving our things. And that, I think, is a pretty profound shift. So for Brenda, and for anyone else dreaming of this life, my advice is to think about what will bring you comfort, safety, and freedom. Your list might be completely different from mine. John's certainly is, and maybe we'll get him to share his one day, if we can pry him away from that beloved spanner set. The key is to find the things that enable you to live the life you want to live, to face the challenges with confidence, and to savor the beautiful, simple moments. The mist over the loch has finally lifted. The sun is breaking through, turning the water from pewter to silver. I think it's time to get out there and join John for that patrol. Maybe today we'll just sit by the water, or maybe we'll drive down one of those little roads that snake off into the hills, just to see where it goes. That's the beauty of it all. Thanks so much for joining me for this little chat. I hope it was helpful, or at least gave you a little glimpse into the practical side of our adventure. It's not always epic sunsets and mountain vistas, sometimes it's just about having the right gear to make a good cup of coffee when you really need one. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep planning, and keep living fully, 1 mile and 1 story at a time.